Valia Harkonnen flashes back to Wallach 9 and recounts the history of humanity's war against the thinking machines, also known as the Butlerian Jihad. History claims an Atreides led them to victory, while Valia's great-grandfather deserted the fight, branding her family as cowards and forcing them into exile on a desolate world. Valia refuses to accept this shame and breaks free to join the Sisterhood, a network of women unafraid of their power. She meets Mother Superior Raquel Berto Anirul, who trains sisters as truthsayers for the great houses. They form a web of influence throughout the Imperium. Raquel embarks on a secret breeding program to create better leaders they can control. She compiles a genetic archive to foster royal unions. In her final moments, Raquel calls for Valia and warns her that Tyran Arafel is coming, a reckoning brought by a tyrant. She tells Valia to strengthen the Sisterhood or it will fail, then dies. Valia tells Kasha, Jinjo, Francesca, and Tula they must prepare by placing one of their own on the Imperial throne. This action would create the first Empress to rule the Imperium. At Raquel's funeral, Dorothea challenges Valia's vision, saying they're meant to guide the Imperium, not rule it. Dorothea calls the breeding index an act of playing God and vows to destroy it. Valia uses a new skill called the Voice to force Dorothea to take out her sword and stab herself in the throat. She picks up the breeding index and tells Tula they must put the Sisterhood above all. 30 years later, 116 years after the Machine Wars and 10,148 years before Paul Atreides, Valia wears Raquel's ring as Mother Superior. She reviews requests from great houses and rejects House Harkonnen's petition for a truthsayer. Imperial guards arrive for Princess Inez Carino, and her half-brother Constantine enters with no claim to the throne. Valia tells Constantine that Inez will spend the next 10 years training with them, but he insists she needs her own quarters and protection. Valia refuses, claiming Inez will be treated like any other student. Constantine reluctantly agrees and they finalize the arrangement. Tula teaches acolytes about lies and truth-saying, explaining how humans rely on deception to survive and how their bodies betray them when they lie. Valia tells Tula there's good news because by next week, Inez will be theirs. On Salusa Secundus, Karen Atreides spars with Inez, advising her to focus on the body instead of the blade. Constantine interrupts them and jokes about Karen's hands on his sister. Emperor Haviko Corino meets with Ferdinand Richesi, who offers a fleet of ballista motherships as a wedding gift for Inez's marriage to his young son, Pruett. Ferdinand wants their own wing in the palace, but Haviko resists until Ferdinand reminds him about troubles on Arrakis and Fremen attacks. Kasha, Haviko's truthsayer, and Vera Richese's truthsayer communicate silently with hand signals. They coordinate to push their houses toward the match. Haviko reluctantly agrees to Ferdinand's terms. Valia trains the acolytes in combat and truth-saying, having them interrogate prisoners to demonstrate their skills. Acolyte Jen shocks the rest by claiming she killed a flesh peddler and her own parents, then laughs at their horrified reactions. Natalia Arat Carino helps Inez dress for the engagement ceremony in her mother's veil and the corset Natalia wore when she first met Havito. She disapproves of both the Sisterhood training and Inez's 9-year-old betrothed. However, Inez says until Pruett comes of age, all the years are hers to do as she pleases. Haviko tells Kasha he's surrounded by vipers, with Ferdinand being the worst. Karen brings news of Desmond Hart, a soldier who survived 12 tours on Arrakis and was thought dead in a Fremen attack. Desmond tells Haviko the attack wasn't Fremen, but insurgents from Haviko's own allied worlds who stole spice. Kasha confirms Desmond's story is true, or at least he believes it. Haviko invites Desmond to the engagement party. Kasha experiences visions of Inez in danger and goes to say goodbye to her, claiming she has to attend to something but will return soon. At the engagement ceremony, Pruett and Inez meet formally. She tries to connect with him, but he's cold and distant. When she notices something in his pocket, he reveals a ball that transforms into a mechanical lizard. It runs loose until Desmond stabs it with a sword. Natalia declares the technology forbidden, reminding Ferdinand that House Carino defeated thinking machines. Haviko decides to overlook the incident, but Inez demands Pruett get rid of the toy. Constantine takes Inez to Division for one last night out together before she leaves. They snort spice and party. Desmond asks Haviko if he believes in forces beyond man and machine. He explains that the attack on Arrakis should have killed him, but he prayed for strength and crawled out of the sand feeling reborn and unafraid. Haviko says if the gods freed him from the wedding, he'd be a true believer. Meanwhile, Inez and Karen do Samuda together and begin undressing. When he hesitates, she reminds him she'll be on another world in 2 days, so he allows her to continue. That night, Desmond finds Pruett alone and tells him there's a war hidden in plain sight, waged by an enemy that has made themselves indispensable. He opines that winning requires sacrifice and Pruett's won't be in vain. Pruett suddenly clutches his stomach as his skin begins to sizzle. He begs for it to stop, but Desmond continues until the boy dies. At the same time on Wallach 9, Kasha wakes up screaming screaming as her skin sizzles the same way. Valia and Tula run toward her screams, but Kasha cries out until she succumbs and dies. Valia tells her she sees. A ship arrives carrying Nazir from the Souk school. She examines Kasha's body and tells Tula the heat came from within, an acute imbalance in her meridian network. Nazir asks if Tula saw any changes before this happened. Tula says Kasha had a nightmare that terrified her. The acolytes discuss whether Kasha's death was an assassination, with Theodosia noting it's suspicious that the Emperor's truthsayer died right before the wedding. Valia tells Tula she's going to Seleucia Secundus because Pruitt Richese died the same way as Kasha. She believes this is the burning truth Mother Raquella spoke of, and she must secure Inez. With Kasha gone, Valia needs to fill the void and protect their plans. Tula worries because the task involves Lila, Raquella's great-great-granddaughter. Valia says Lila needs to connect with her ancestors through the agony to understand how the prophecy unfolds. Tula raised Lila and can't accept putting her at risk, but Valia insists they need answers. Tula warns this will jeopardize secrets they've worked hard to protect about themselves, Francesca and Kasha. Valia says it's a risk they must take and hands control to Tula. She asks Theodosia to accompany her to Seleucia Secundus despite Theodosia's troubled circumstances. Ferdinand demands to see the man who killed Pruitt, but Haviko claims there's no suspect. Valia arrives unannounced with her condolences. Under her manipulation, Haviko repeats there's no subject being held. Valia knows he's lying and insists on questioning the suspect who might be responsible for both deaths. Natalia encourages Haviko to hand Desmond over to Valia for interrogation. Inez hyperventilates when she hears about Kasha's death. Valia helps her calm down and leaves Theodosia to care for her. Valia goes to see Desmond in the suspensor cells and asks who he is. He claims to be just a soldier from Balut, but she knows he's more. He admits he killed Pruitt because it was justice and says Kasha was unworthy and corrupt. Valia touches him and asks what he meant by seeing. Desmond says Shai Halud took his eye and granted him a gift to see what even Valia cannot. Valia tells Javiko and Natalia that Desmond speaks the truth as he sees it, but his claims are lies. Javiko wants proof of how Desmond killed both Kasha and Pruitt simultaneously before taking action. Valia tells Vera to bring Ferdinand to heal because they cannot afford to lose the fleet. Karen meets with Horace and Michaela, revealing he's scanned the palace layout for a rebellion plot. Michaela questions if Karen's gotten too comfortable at the palace after seeing him with Inez, but he insists his allegiance is to the rebellion against the great houses hoarding spice. Tula asks Lila if she knows why infants are separated from their mothers in the Sisterhood, explaining it prevents bonds that might come before the order. She tells Lila they need her to talk to Mother Raquella about how to fight Tyron Arafel. Lila realizes she's Raquella's descendant and must undergo the agony to unlock her genetic memory. Tula says it's dangerous, but Lila has natural aptitude, and it must be her choice. Constantine and Shannon Richise have sex. Shannon says the throne is meaningless because real power lies in whoever controls Arrakis and the orange dust. Constantine reveals that Haviko has Desmond from Arrakis in custody. Haviko tells Natalia that Desmond killed Pruitt using a power given to him by a sandworm. Ferdinand will blame Javiko if he learns the truth. Natalia suggests Desmond might have value as they defend themselves. Tula prepares Rossic poison for Lila's agony, despite Avila's warnings that she's leaving the fate of the Imperium in one child's hands. Valia and Theodosia arrive at the palace, catching the royal family unprepared. Ferdinand demands to see his son's killer, but Javiko denies holding anyone. Under Valia's manipulation through hand signals to Vera, the Richeses are escorted out. Valia learns Kasha died the same way as Pruitt and insists on questioning the suspect. Despite resistance, Natalia convinces Haviko to allow it. With Tula nearby and Avila watching, they drip poison into Lila's eye. She screams in agony as Tula coaches her to breathe and break down the poison. Lila finds herself in an empty room with whispering voices and many women grabbing at her. Speaking through Lila, Raquella says the key to the reckoning is one born twice. Once in blood and once in spice. It is a revenant full of scars, a weapon born of war on a path too short. Before they can learn more, Dorothea's spirit takes control of Lila, choking her and showing her the vision of Valia forcing Dorothea's suicide. Through Lila, Dorothea tells Tula she stole her future and now she'll take Tula's hope. Tula begs Lila to follow her voice, but Lila's foremothers pile on top of her. Lila drops her keepsake and her head falls to the side. Tula holds her face and cries, begging her to come back, but Lila appears dead. Haviko nods to Desmond, who walks into Ferdinand's room and uses his power against him. Orla begs for it to stop until Haviko nods again, and Desmond ceases. Haviko tells Ferdinand to go home, bury his son, and never tell anyone what happened. Desmond comes to Valia and tells her House Carino no longer requires her services, and her privileges have been revoked. Valia is shocked he thinks he can replace her. She uses the voice to command him to take out his blade, which works, but when she orders him to drive it into his throat, he resists. He pulls the blade away and puts it back, saying he always wondered what her greatest fear would be. Now he knows it's that people will hear her and not care. Valia and Theodosia leave the palace as the door shuts behind them. She realizes she's lost her hold on the Imperial. Valia says they need to act quickly to maintain their hold on the great houses. She goes to her childhood home where her family prepares a meal. At dinner, her brother Griffin announces he's going to Zemia to petition the Landsraad for better trade deals. Valia's uncle Evgeny mentions that Paul Atreides has resurfaced, and Valia sees this as an opportunity to correct the historical record and restore their family's honor. Her mother Sonia accuses Valia of greed and entitlement, but Griffin defends his sister, saying she's extraordinary and once saved him from drowning by ordering him to swim with her voice, and he agrees to track down Vorian for her. At Griffin's funeral, Valia stands apart from her family. She tells Tula that Vorian murdered Griffin and disappeared, but their family won't support her revenge. She further advises Tula not to stay on their dying planet no matter what, and to find something else because the only thing left there is death. In the present, several truthsayers gather to discuss recent events. Some think Desmond was touched by the Maker, which is how he resisted Valia's power. Valia tells them to maintain their resolve and return to their nobles to head off attempts to sow distrust. She will regain her hold on the Carinos. Michaela brings Valia a message from Tula saying Leela didn't survive the agony, but Raquella spoke through her about one born twice. Valia realizes this is Desmond Hart and decides she needs to go home. Tula watches over Lila's body as Avila suggests letting her go, saying no one has ever returned from this state. Tula roughly grabs Avila's hand and says she'll do it when she chooses, then dismisses her. She picks up the carved tooth her brother gave her, which she had given to Lila. Years earlier, young Tula arrives with Ori Atreides at his family's hunting grounds. She worries his family won't approve of her, but he assures her they will. During the hunt, Ori's horse shatters its leg when the path gives way. Tula retrieves poison and injects it into the horse's neck to euthanize it, then comforts Ori. At the Sisterhood, Dorothea teaches a class on truth sense, while Valia questions whether they should withhold truth from a corrupt Imperium. Dorothea says Valia is scared because she has nothing to serve. They'll all be tested tomorrow and must commit to the Sisterhood or resign themselves to unremarkable lives. Kasha and Francesca complain about Dorothea's rigid beliefs. Valia reveals she was going to be her brother's truthsayer, but he was murdered and her parents forced her to come anyway. Dorothea asks the acolytes if they can put the Sisterhood above everything else, even their families. Several say yes and go inside, but Valia remains standing in the rain. Dorothea tells her they both know she'll always be a Harkonnen and leaves Valia alone outside. Raquella approaches Valia and introduces herself, inviting Valia inside despite her not taking the vow. Raquella says the voice stopped her outside and she'd never felt anything like it. She asks if it happened before, and Valia explains it happened once when her brother was drowning. Raquella tells her the human race is evolving. She knows about Griffin's death and understands Valia's pain. Valia can do extraordinary things with the Sisterhood if she decides to stay. Tula helps during the hunt by showing Ori's young cousin Albert how to prepare dead animals as bait, being careful not to rupture poison sacs. That night, Ori asks Tula to marry him. She says it's only been a few months, but he knows he wants a future with her. They have sex while his family prepares for the hunt outside. In the morning, Tula tells Ori she regrets how things are and reveals her real name is Tula Harkonnen. He says he understands why she didn't tell him and nothing could make him hate her. Their families chose hate, but he doesn't agree with that. Then he realizes how quiet it is and exits to find his entire clan dead. Tula injects him with the same poison and holds him while he dies, saying she's sorry. Young Albert appears and Tula tells him to go. She watches as a bull stands on a cliff above, then turns and walks away. Raquella shows Valia the tunnels containing their genetic library, explaining they've been gathering DNA since the Great Wars to create matches for the great houses. They bolster unions to influence future generations, relying on forbidden technology. Valia shows Francesca and Kasha that she's been working on the voice and demonstrates by making Kasha slap Francesca. Raquella watches from a distance and later calls both Dorothea and Valia into a meeting, saying they're both future leaders, but their followers create division. She needs them to find a way forward together and prepares to poison them to let them speak to their foremothers. Valia apologizes and walks away instead of taking the poison. Dorothea proceeds with the ritual. Kasha tells Valia that Raquella wants to see her. Raquella has received a message from Tula with a particular line that feels like a code. Valia says it means she has to go home. Raquella knew Valia's family name was always more important to her, which is why she couldn't go through with the agony. She has unfinished business with her house. Raquella tells Valia to go home and settle what needs settling, but then she must commit to a path. She tells Valia to return a Reverend Mother or not at all, and gives her a syringe of poison. Sisters stare as Valia walks past them, and one calls her a coward. Valia returns home and asks Tula if Ori is dead. Tula confirms they all are. Valia says Griffin would be proud, but Tula asks if he really would. Their mother Sonia blames Valia for what Tula did, but Tula insists it was her choice. Their father Virgile says Valia shouldn't have come back. Evgeny asks if Valia thought about how the massacre would blow back on them. Valia says they should thank Tula for punishing the family that destroyed theirs and showing the Harkonnens aren't cowards. Sonia continues arguing until Valia uses the voice to silence her and make her pick up a knife. Valia stops and leaves. She takes out the syringe and drips poison into her eye, experiencing immediate pain as her foremothers appear. Tula tells her to come back and Valia gasps awake, having survived the agony. Tula says they need to hurry to catch their ship and reveals she's coming too because she doesn't want to lose Valia like she lost Griffin. She makes Valia promise the Sisterhood will be a fresh start. Valia tells her they have a new purpose now. Avila brings the acolytes in to say goodbye to Leela. Emmeline says it's all right because Lila's wisdom still exists, but Jen disagrees, saying Tula knew how desperate Lila was and took advantage of that. Avila says the Sisterhood is built on sacrifice, and many sisters younger than Lila have laid down their lives. They owe Lila and Tula gratitude and respect. The acolytes step forward to say goodbye, then Tula disconnects her. Theodosia asks Valia where they're going, and she says to the last place anyone would expect. The door opens to reveal Harrow, Valia's nephew, who is surprised to see his aunt. Behind him, Evgeny coughs, never expecting to see Valia come home. Harrow welcomes her in and asks about Tula. Avila tells Tula it was hard to let Lila go and believes Valia will be proud. Tula agrees, but then goes to the storeroom where she's secretly keeping Lila alive. She asks Anirul for diagnostics and suggests administering spice. Anirul says that's not authorized, but Tula says Valia left her in charge and orders Anirul to keep Lila alive. Emmeline wakes with a start and goes to the bathroom. She hears a voice whispering her name and follows it, finding a vision of herself having slit her own throat. Jen wakes to sounds of moaning and finds the other sisters crying in their sleep. She discovers Emmeline's bed empty and finds her preparing to slit her own throat, stopping her just in time. Harrow pours a drink for Valia at their table. Evgeny knows she's been ousted and has nowhere to go except back to the family she shunned. Valia says the only thing fading is Evgeny's health. Harrow asks what happened at the royal engagement. Evgeny assumes Valia had a part in spreading the rumor that Pruitt was murdered. Valia says the Sisterhood will elevate House Harkonnen by offering them a truth-sayer. Evgeny is angry she ignored them for so long and abandoned them. Valia hears voices telling her she's not wanted there but ignores them. She tells Harrow he could represent the family in the Landsrod. She has Theodosia use her training to deduce that Harrow wants respect for himself and his house. Valia says having the Mother Superior as his truth-sayer would bring respect. She says they can prove their worth by ensuring Harrow a seat on the High Council. At breakfast, Inez joins Haviko, Natalia, Constantine, and Desmond. She makes her displeasure clear by asking about Desmond killing Fremen on Arrakis. Desmond says everything he's done has been for the good of the Imperium. Inez asks if Haviko heard the rumor spreading about Pruitt's death. Haviko dismisses it as nonsense with no proof. Inez says she's terrified to live in her own home and wants to follow Valia back to Wallach 9 for training. Natalia says that's no longer an option because they need her at home to show a united front. Constantine suggests letting her get away, but Haviko blames Constantine for getting them into this mess by telling Shannon. Inez thinks the rumors are true and Desmond killed Pruitt. Desmond reminds her Pruitt broke the highest law about thinking machines. Inez says the family can't be united as long as Desmond is on Haviko's side and leaves. Tula is haunted by voices as Jen and Emmeline tell her what happened. When Emmeline mentions sand, Avila suggests they return to their studies. Emmeline asks about Mother Dorothea and Tula says she took her own life out of grief. Emmeline uses truth sense on her. Jen reveals Emmeline wasn't the only one having nightmares. All the acolytes were, except Jen herself. Tula is curious about them all having the same dream. Desmond reads from a book, then rips pages out and burns them. Haviko asks if he spread the rumor about Pruitt being murdered. Desmond suspects Valia did it. He's destroying Kashah's Sisterhood book and wants all great houses to remove their truth-sayers. Haviko says the High Council would use that to challenge his power. Desmond asks how he wants to be remembered. Haviko says now is not the time because the Imperium needs stability. Horus and Kiran go to Duri, who shows them a modified drone with a thermal bomb. Once released into the vents, it'll make its way to the throne room. Michaela asks if Kiran is sure he's up for this. Valia composes a message to Tula about feeling haunted by her past. She breaks the recorder instead of finishing. Theodosia brings word the attack is moving forward, targeting the Emperor's speech. Valia allows them to proceed because she intends to save the Emperor's life in full view and be back in everyone's good graces. In her opinion, she'll not only fail, but will destroy it it as soon as Karen releases it, then deliver him to the Emperor as a traitor. Truthsayers stationed with the great houses of Hagal, Gubangbala, and Yaufirx begin a coordinated whisper campaign. They pull their lords aside, suggesting that the toy malfunction that killed Pruitt Rachace was actually an assassination. They steer the desperate lords toward Harrow Harkonnen, convincing them that he should be the one to demand a formal inquiry. Harrow, feeling the weight of his family's faded status, accepts the invitation to the High Council. Valia stands beside him, assuring him that by doing what the other houses are too afraid to do, he will elevate House Harkonnen above the law. On Wallach 9, Tula gathers the acolytes and has them ingest spice to open their mind's eye. She guides them into their shared nightmare, instructing them to draw what they see. The girls begin to draw frantically, their pens moving in unison. Sister Avila enters and demands Tula stop the experiment, but the acolytes are already deep in the vision. They all produce the same image, a blackened page with two glowing eyes staring from the darkness. Emmeline screams that God is judging them and that the reckoning has arrived. Back on Salusa Secundus, Desmond finds Yaviko in his private chambers. He rips pages from a Sisterhood book and burns them, telling the Emperor that the Sisterhood's whisper campaigns are the real threat to his throne. He urges Yaviko to remove all truthsayers from the great houses. When Yaviko hesitates, fearing a challenge to his power, Desmond asks how he wants to be remembered in history. Yaviko insists on stability, but Desmond counters that the time for boldness is now. Meanwhile, Natalia meets with Desmond and reveals she was the one who leaked the truth about Pruitt's death. She wants Yaviko to rule through fear, believing that if the great houses fear his wrath over forbidden machines, they will be easier to control. Karen Atreides and Inez share a final night before the council. They kiss, but Karen pulls back, telling her he is trying to choose the right path. Valia, preparing for her masterstroke, meets with Theodosia. She tasks the acolyte with a last resort. Theodosia uses her genetic training to shift her physical features, transforming into Valia's dead brother Griffin. Valia touches her brother's face, seeking comfort from the Phantom before she enters the throne room to execute her plan. The Landsraad convenes. The Speaker of the Hall gives the floor to Harrow Harkonnen. As Harrow begins his formal request for an investigation into the Imperial House, Valia watches the vents, waiting for Karen to release the drone so she can thwart the attack. Princess Inez interrupts the proceedings, pointing at Desmond and accusing him of murder. The room erupts in murmurs. Before Valia can act, Desmond signals the Imperial guards. They march in with captured rebels and the modified drone. Desmond addresses the council, claiming that Pruitt Rachace was executed for possessing a thinking machine, just as these rebels intended to execute the council today. He drops the drone and stomps it into the floor. He then uses his power to incinerate Lord Hagal and the prisoners. Their bodies sizzle and burn from the inside out while the other lords watch in horror. Valia's plan is ruined, as she did not get to save the Emperor, and Desmond has successfully framed the dissenters as machine worshippers. Desmond walks past Valia, leaving a trail of blood from the effort of his power, which she secretly wipes up with a cloth. Tula returns to the secret room where Lila is being held. She uses forbidden technology and spice to finally wake the girl. Lila's eyes snap open, but they are the glowing blue eyes of Ibad. She speaks with the voice of Mother Raquella, warning that the reckoning will drive the Imperium to tyranny. Tula realizes Lila is twice born. She uses the blood sample Valia sent from Salusa and runs it through the Anirul breeding index. The machine processes the DNA and reveals a staggering truth. Desmond Hart is a descendant of both House Atreides and House Harkonnen. Desmond visits Empress Natalia. He tells her the truth of his origin. A sister gave birth to him and abandoned him to the scavengers on a desolate world. He was left to fight for scraps until the desert changed him. Natalia, who shares a mutual hatred for the Sisterhood, realizes that Desmond was chosen just as she once hoped to be. She leans in and kisses him, promising that together they will rid the Imperium of the Sisterhood forever. At Wallach 9, the possessed Lila identifies the nightmare as a genetically modified airborne RNA retrovirus that targets the brain's fear center. Tula's medical assistant, Nazir, attempts to transmute the virus to create a cure. During the process, the virus adapts and becomes active. Nazir sees a vision of a monster rising from Arrakis and begins to scream as her skin sizzles. Tula watches helplessly as Nazir dies the same way Kasha and Pruitt did. She realizes the virus is a bioweapon, and the fear of the victim is what triggers the lethal reaction. Valia returns to House Harkonnen and finds her uncle Evgeny dying. He accuses her of being a black hole who destroyed their family for her ambition. Valia refuses to give him his medicine, watching him die on the floor. She then uses Theodosia to transform into Griffin once more so she can hear him tell her that he understands her sacrifices. She sends word to Michaela on Salusa that the rebels must be used to occupy Desmond while Francesca maneuvers to influence the Emperor. Michaela and Karen set up chain detonators in an underground market. Desmond arrives with guards tipped off by Harrow. He confronts Michaela, a Fremen, asking why she serves the Sisterhood that is pillaging her planet. As guards search the building, Kieran fights his way through. He activates the detonators, causing a massive explosion. Desmond survives by activating his personal shield, but the blast destroys the rebel base. Kieran realizes Michaela is a sister and leaves her, disgusted by her deception. Desmond wakes in the rubble and finds a Sisterhood robe, finally having the physical proof he needs to link Valia to the rebellion. Following the explosion at the rebel base, Haviko holds a formal ceremony to announce a new elite regiment. He names Desmond Hart as his Bashar, tasked with eradicating treason across the Imperium. To consolidate control, Haviko orders the Imperial fleet to remain in orbit above Salusa Secundus as a show of strength. Princess Inez attempts to protest Desmond's promotion, but she is physically barred by guards. Desmond meets with Harrow Harkonnen and accuses him of treason for his role in the Landsrod inquiry. Harrow grovels, shifting the blame entirely onto Valia. Desmond demands proof of Valia's involvement in the rebellion. To gain Desmond's favor, Harrow reveals the location of the underground smugglers market in Zimia. He opens a hidden gadget containing the palace's architectural schematics after Harrow leaves. He intends to use for his own leverage. At the Mother School, the situation turns dire. Tula continues to use the twice-born Lila as a vessel for Mother Raquella. Raquella identifies the virus as a targeted bioweapon and suggests that the only way to stop the reckoning is to eliminate the source. Tula realizes the source is Desmond Hart. Sister Avila discovers the illegal technology Tula is using to keep Lila alive. She warns Tula that the acolytes are demanding to be sent home. Tula dismisses her, insisting that protecting the Sisterhood requires breaking its own laws. Valia sends Francesca back to the palace to seduce Haviko. Francesca tells the Emperor that she has left the Sisterhood and wants only him. Haviko, tired of being a puppet, embraces her, but the reunion is interrupted by news that Inez has been arrested. Inez had attempted to break Paul Atreides out of the suspensor cells. Natalia caught her and used the incident to teach Inez a lesson about power, throwing her into the cells alongside the man she tried to save. Valia realizes the Emperor's reign is effectively over. She gives Francesca a needle coated in lethal metacyanide, ordering her to assassinate Haviko so that Inez can be crowned as a Sisterhood-controlled empress. Valia then orchestrates her own arrest to gain entry to the palace dungeons. She brings Theodosia, who uses her shape-shifting ability to transform into Inez. Valia uses the voice to compel a guard to release her, and then stabs him with his own sword. She frees the real Inez and Kieran, leaving the disguised Theodosia behind to buy them time. Desmond arrives at the cells and finds Inez. The dying guard reveals that Valia was the one who freed her. When Desmond approaches, the guard, revealed to be Theodosia in disguise, stabs Desmond in the leg before being subdued and put into suspension. In the royal chambers, Haviko confronts Francesca. He tells her that Valia revealed the Sisterhood has been manipulating his life since before he was born. He asks Francesca if she truly loves him, or if she is just another puppet master. Francesca pulls out the poison needle but cannot bring herself to use it. Haviko, realizing that he has never been free and never will be, takes a knife and stabs himself in the chest. As he dies in Francesca's arms, Empress Natalia enters. She takes the metacyanide needle from Francesca's hand and stabs her in the neck with it. Natalia then calls for the guards, framing the Sisterhood for the Emperor's murder. Back on Wallach 9, the spirit of Mother Dorothea fully takes over Leela's body. She leads the acolytes to the site of her original suicide, claiming the Harkonnens have lied about the school's history. She leads a revolt into the secret laboratory and discovers the Aniral Breeding Index. Declaring the machine an abomination that betrays the Butlerian Jihad, Dorothea uses a heavy tool to smash the computer, destroying centuries of genetic records and blinding the Sisterhood's future plans. Valia, Inez, and Kieran flee toward the spaceport. Valia enters a deep trance to confront Desmond's mental projection. She sees a vision of her brother Griffin under the ice and realizes she must let go of her fear to see the truth. In the vision, she sees a thinking machine being used to inject a virus into a man's eye. She realizes Desmond is a machine-human hybrid. Tula arrives at the spaceport and finds Valia standing over a collapsed Desmond. Valia raises a knife to kill him, but Tula uses the voice to stop her. Tula finally confesses the secret she kept for 30 years. Desmond is her son. Flashbacks reveal that Tula did not have a stillbirth. Fearing the Sisterhood would weaponize her child, she gave him to a laborer to be raised in secret. She passed off a dead infant as her own and handed the living Desmond to Francesca to be spirited away. Tula realizes that by trying to save him from the Sisterhood, she left him to be found by the hidden hand that turned him into a weapon. Valia is furious, calling Tula a liar and a monster. Tula argues that they are both wolves who have fed on the Imperium. Valia tells Tula that the reckoning is here, and she will no longer fight in the light. She hands Tula a knife and leaves her with Desmond. Tula tries tries to comfort her son, touching his face as she did when he was a baby, but Desmond remains cold. He stands up and orders his guards to arrest his mother. The season concludes with the great houses in chaos. Haviko is dead, and Natalia is in control of the throne alongside Desmond. The Sisterhood's breeding index is gone, leaving them without a map for their prophecy. Valia, Yanez, and Kieran arrive on the desert planet of Arrakis. Standing amidst the dunes, Valia stares into the horizon. She tells Yanez that their enemy is no longer just the Corrinos, but a shadow force using forbidden technology. She declares that their journey to find the truth and reclaim the Imperium begins in the sand. Season 2 will debut on HBO in 2026. Be sure to watch for our recap of Season 2 right here on this channel.